Hello, welcome to Reel Film Snobs. I am Angela Yeager. I'm pleased to have with me back on the show my best friend from Phoenix, Arizona, Hayley Ringle. Welcome to the show, Hayley.
Hello.
And Hayley is back because we were talking about episodes we could do, and I was thinking, oh, okay, I did a David Lynch tribute this year and a Gene Hackman tribute because a lot of big folks seem to keep dying in 2025. Seems like that's the way the year's going. And then, of course, Val Kilmer passed this year, and I immediately thought of Hayley because when I first met you in the eighth grade, you told me that one of your favorite movies of all time, I don't know if it's still in your top five, but at the time it was like I think number two after Harold and Maude, was Real Genius with Val Kilmer. So I knew you were a fan. And I weirdly have never seen Real Genius. I don't know how all those years knowing you, we never sat and watched it together.
Oh,
Um,
you've never,
I
well,
had never
obviously you
seen it.
watched it
Well, yeah,
now.
now, but I
Oh,
when
wow.
I thought I had, but when I started watching, I'm like, nope, this isn't familiar at all. So apparently, somehow, all those years of hanging out together in high school and in college, we never watched it together, which is interesting. Maybe
Crazy.
didn't have a VHS copy laying around that we could watch together. But yeah, so we're going to do this tribute to Val Kilmer, a really interesting actor who, of course, was known for his method acting style, getting really into his roles. Really took kind of a tumble in his career because he became known as difficult to work for. So he has like despite being in Hollywood since the 80s, really mid to early 80s, had some big gaps in his career with not a lot of work. And then, of course, very, tragically died fairly young. And so his last major role was a voiceless role in the Top Gun Maverick movie, which we're not reviewing the Top Gun movies because those are really obvious. I thought we'd do a little less obvious picks, but
But he
yeah,
also had a long period where he had a lot of health problems, and it was kind of a mystery of what the problems were. I saw him speak live at an event, and this was when he wasn't really announcing his problems, and he had his neck covered with a scarf, and his voice sounded awful. So he was
right.
still making it, seem that he was fine when obviously he had a lot of health problems, and
Which is
ultimately,
really
you know,
typical in Hollywood because people don't want the word to get out and then not get roles. But in his case, with throat cancer,
mhm.
good reminder not to smoke, folks. That he lost his voice entirely eventually, and then there was a documentary that surprisingly all these films we are reviewing today were really hard to find. A lot of people when they
Mhm.
passed, like Gene Hackman, they did lots of collections of his films on lots of the channels, Criterion, Prime. They all did like collections. Val Kilmer, his stuff is fairly hard to find. Some of it, I mean,
Yeah.
and so except for the documentary about him that came out towards the end of his life, Val, that's pretty easy to find. But the
Mhm.
movies he did, a lot of them were I had to pay for on demand, which I hate doing for movies that are this old, but you do what you
Yeah.
do. So we each got to pick two that we wanted to review. And so I'll just kick it off with our first movie, which is The Doors from 1991 by Oliver Stone, who you just met recently and got to see in
Mhm.
person.
Yes.
And I picked this one because I hadn't actually seen The Doors, and so I wanted to
Hmm.
get an excuse to see it. My husband really likes this movie, and so that was the other reason. Is he said, "Oh, I'll watch it again." I said, "You just watched it like a year ago," and he was like, "I'll watch it again." So he really likes this movie. Of course, he's a musician and he likes The Doors music somewhat. I mean, he's not like a mega fan. But so it was interesting going into this. Val Kilmer plays Jim Morrison, the lead singer of The Doors, who to this day has a very fanatical following. I'll have to tell you later, Haley, off camera, about a funny story I have when I was still a reporter about a guy who approached me at the Oregon State Fair, convinced that Jim Morrison is well and alive and living in Southern Oregon. And Oliver Stone is an interesting director to film this because he really focuses on both the mystique of what made Jim Morrison such an obsessive personality, as well as his downward spiral, as his issues with drugs and alcohol got worse and worse. In some ways, it's a very typical musician biopic because of that focus on the drug, sex, and rock and roll, right? But I think what one of the reasons I think was great we highlighted this is because Val Kilmer really goes all in on this part. I mean, he embodies Jim Morrison. He does his own singing. So they use Jim Morrison's voice on a lot of the close-up shots, but in a lot of the other scene, or I mean, they use Jim Morrison's voice in the far-away shots, but in a lot of the close-ups and a lot of the studio work, that's actually Val Kilmer singing. And the band, who the rest of the remaining members of the Doors, who were actually involved in the making of the film and signed off on it, said that it actually kind of freaked them out how much he seemed like Jim Morrison. And he really does. It's really kind of a shame because it seemed like if he was going to get an Oscar win, it would have been for this movie because he goes all
Yeah.
in and completely dedicated himself to this performance. Had you seen this before, Haley?
I had, but I hadn't seen it in a while, so it was interesting to watch it again. I did like it. I thought it was too long. I think a lot of movies are too long, but obviously, this is, Val Kilmer at his best. I love any. I mean, we have to talk about how gorgeous Val Kilmer is. He
Okay.
is so gorgeous in all these films, and this one especially. Like he's the perfect person to play Jim Morrison because Jim Morrison was such a sex symbol,
Right,
and
right.
so it's so perfect for Val to play this character. I loved obviously this is one of those films that it's like this is too good to be true. Or where real life is crazier, the debauchery and the chaos surrounding Jim Morrison and surrounding the Doors was just like, how did he survive as long as he did?
Yeah.
If he was really doing this much drugs and
Well,
alcohol and having
28
sex with
isn't
so many
that.
women.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he didn't live that long,
27,
20,
27,
27. Yeah.
27 is the magical age where a lot of unfortunate people have died. But it was obviously interesting to see the Whiskey a Go Go, which I've been to see all of the cameos, Crispin Glover, Billy Idol, Eric Burden. And I also liked it was
Oliver
Pam and
Stone
Jim.
himself, I have to mention
Yeah,
that. Yeah, he's in one scene as the film professor.
because it was Pam and Jim, and I immediately thought of The Office. If that
Oh,
had something to do with how they chose those names, if they were like a Doors fan, because I was
I
like,
never
oh,
thought
it's
about
The
that.
Office, yeah.
Yeah.
So, definitely, an interesting look and a great biopic, especially since this year, this past year we've had, Timothy Chalamet doing Bob Dylan. We've had some good biopics, and I think this is definitely one of the best.
I think that one of the things that Oliver Stone does as a director that's really effective, I thought some of the live concert footage was some of the best parts of the movie. There's the scene where Jim Morrison ends up kind of leading the crowd throughout the arena and kind of this chanting and dancing where things get totally out of control and the police basically are just, I mean, everything is chaotic, but the way he films that scene, you almost feel like you're in the audience.
Yes.
And he really captures this moment in the 60s where I mean everyone's naked. I mean things are just total wild abandonment. I don't know if it glamorizes it per se, but it makes it very eerie. It's hard to almost imagine something like that today at that level. But it also shows, I think, the cult of personality that surrounded Jim Morrison and the other members of the band, Kyle MacLachlan in particular as the
Yes.
keyboard player, who's much more straight laced, but himself basically sort of obsessed with Jim Morrison. Apparently, I learned this from talking to my husband. To this day, he goes on speaking tours talking about the genius of Jim Morrison, that guy. So the other band members also drank the Kool-Aid. It's not like they were like, I mean, yeah, they were like, well, he gets too much attention, but there was an element of like, yeah, we're also obsessed with him. So I thought that was interesting. I still feel like, and I thought I think the casting of Meg Ryan as Pam is a little odd. It was very
Yeah.
against type, and
And
it's
I did
something
not
that
like her hair at all.
yeah, it
She had
was a
like a
bad
really bad
wig.
wig. Oh, it was
And she
awful.
doesn't really, to me at least, the whole kind of hippie moonchild thing, I don't think Meg Ryan pulls it off. I think another actress, it's probably because she was just super mega famous in 91, but it's just kind of hard Meg Ryan has that, sweet, kind
Mhm.
of America's, sweetheart type thing going on, and it's hard to, for me. I just didn't think she worked in the character. I think a
Well,
different
the
kind of
other
actress.
woman that he ends up with, I thought would have been better. The witch, the journalist,
Mystical, yeah, the
which I
mystical
always
journalist.
hate when journalists end up having sex with their the person they interview, because I'm like, as a former journalist, I'm like, that's not how we are, and
No,
that
but I
always
think
happens
in
in films.
yeah, well, and it was the 60s, so
Well, yeah,
maybe it
and it
happened more
obviously
back
was
then.
based on a true story. So,
Yeah, I mean, she and the real woman in that movie is the one who actually marries them in the kind of occult type thing that their
mhm.
occult ceremony. That was the real lady, the real so then the real Pam unfortunately died just a few years after Jim Morrison, probably from drugs. It didn't say at the end of the movie, but yeah, definitely a great
And
performance.
heartbreak.
Yeah, definitely a great performance by Val Kilmer. So if you're a fan of Val Kilmer, this is a must see. To me, it's not a perfect film. I also think it runs a little too long, and
Yes.
Oliver Stone has some sexist elements of his personality that I think come out in this movie. Yes, I know it was the 60s and women, stripped and did all those things, but it's definitely a very male point of view in the movie. So.
Well, since I just saw Oliver Stone, he is still sexist in real life. So
Oh yeah, you
he did
mentioned that he
he
kind of
definitely made some comments and I was like, ooh. So,
yeah, yeah.
this is Oliver Stone.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one because I'm excited to review this one.
Okay. So Top Secret from 1984, I actually had never seen before, which is very surprising because this was Val Kilmer in his peak a year before Real Genius. It's kind of like Naked Gun, you know. It's and it's funny because this, it kind of is the same, as like Real Genius with the military, and they're, obviously not the same thing, but essentially he is this rock star that Germany invites to come perform. And of course, all this, craziness happens. And Val Kilmer again plays a rock star and again sings. But this is way before the Doors. So since this is 1984. So I liked it. I thought it was funny, obviously ridiculous. I love that he sang. And, I mean, I love this era of Val Kilmer, because obviously Real Genius is such, good film. So like the 80s is like the best, Val Kilmer years, in my opinion. So, but, it was definitely a little ridiculous. You have to really be into that kind of like Naked Gun style of,
Airplane, Naked Gun, yeah, Hot
yeah,
Shots. I
yeah,
like those spoof movies. So if you don't like spoof movies like Naked Gun and Airplane, you're probably not going to like Top Secret. It's
yeah.
funny because I had just seen the new Mission Impossible a week before I watched this on streaming, and it's a spoof of like spy movies in a way because it's like
Yes.
he's this kind of not pretty innocent American in East Germany. And of course, the East Germans are plotting to, take over the world or whatever. And he's being used as a foil. And then he ends up getting involved with with the revolutionaries who are fighting the communists. And so it's also very of the 80s, and that of course, the communists are the bad guys and everything. And so, but yeah, Jim Abrams, Jerry, and David Zucker, who directed it, are the guys who did the Airplane and Naked Gun movies. And so you have to be into that kind of humor. And I have to say, like, it's still, some of those jokes still make me laugh. I actually do like that kind of humor when it's done right. There's a scene where they're at the ballet, and I won't describe exactly what it is to spoil it for people, but you know which scene I'm talking about at the ballet, where the women ballerinas are dancing off of the guys. That, I
Hmm.
mean, I laughed really hard. So if you have a very childish sense of humor and like that kind of humor, it landed pretty well for me. It is very interesting because Val Kilmer went to Juilliard to study acting, and then did a lot of theater, and this is his first movie role. And what a weird transition to go from like Juilliard, I'm going to be a serious actor, and then your first movie is this like spy spoof movie where you're doing some of the most ridiculous things imaginable. It's also interesting to me that his first two movies, this one and Real Genius, are comedies, just straight comedies. And then he didn't
Yeah.
do another comedy for 20 years until Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and like really went into just completely, but he shows he can do comedy here and sing a
Oh, he's fabulous. Yeah.
totally different style of singing, more like an Elvis Presley style singing
Yes.
in this movie, and dancing. And
Hmm.
so very interesting. Yes, and he is very pretty. Someone I
Very
think on
pretty.
Letterboxd said, that Val Kilmer is the prettiest girl in the movie, and I said, yeah, that's very pretty. Yes, in this
I
character.
I could sit and stare at those lips all day.
This is a very hard movie to find. I don't know where you watched it, but I happen to have a friend who had a copy. That's how I was able to watch it, but it's
Top
not,
secret.
yeah, I found it's hard to find.
I had to rent it, I think
Yeah.
on Apple TV.
Yeah, it's not easy to
Yeah.
find. You usually have to pay
Yeah.
for it, which I don't know why. I don't know if the company that originally put it out went out of business, so that's why it's not on any streaming channels. But I found that to be the case with a lot of these movies. So
Yeah.
fun if you like those style movies. I would say if you like Naked Gun, if you like Airplane, Hot Shots with Charlie Sheen, that's another one of that type of
Or if
movie.
you like Val Kilmer.
Or if you really like Val Kilmer, you would enjoy this movie.
Yes.
Definitely could see him flexing his comedy side. So, well, now we've
Yes.
got to give plenty of time for your favorite movie here.
So, Real Genius, I have loved it ever since I saw it. It came out in 1995, and I can't remember when I saw it because I would have been really young in 85. So, I don't think I saw it right when it came out. But it's one of those classic 80s films that has like the most amazing music. Every time you hear Tears for Fears, everybody wants to rule the world. I'm immediately transported back into Real Genius. So, essentially, Val Kilmer plays this super smart guy who is kind of at like an MIT type, and he and other really smart guys and girls or I guess it's all guys in the little group, but they're tasked with, producing this laser, which of course has nefarious means at the end. But and supposedly the first 3 years that Val Kilmer has been at this school, he was a straight laced person. And then the last year, when this other young 15-year-old stud comes, this super smart guy, he kind of becomes like a wacky, pretty much like the same character he was in Top Secret. But I think I love this character because everybody is like smart and like misunderstood. And I feel like that's been my life, but also like quirky.
Hmm.
He has like the most amazing, he's always wearing funny clothes and he's very charming and always like hitting on girls. But to me, it was like cool and like, oh my God, like I want to be with this guy, and I
Yeah.
think that's why I've always loved this film because I identify so much with it. And another really cool thing is the guy who lives in the closet, Laszlo, has seen a resurgence because he's in White Lotus, which if you watch White Lotus,
Yeah, he is.
he's the rich bald guy. And then he
He was
also had
also in
another.
Napoleon Dynamite
I was
as a,
just gonna say
yeah,
that.
yeah,
He
sorry.
also had another resurgence as Uncle Rico. So I mean, he's played some really cool characters. And that Laszlo character, the mysterious guy who lives in the closet, has an interesting story. An interesting story in the film. So I obviously love this film. I still think it lives up to. I still think it holds up. Since I've seen it so many times, and I watched it again, obviously, actually this morning.
Oh, you just
And
rewatched it this morning,
I
and you
just
don't own
rewatched
it
it this morning.
anymore.
I
You
thought
don't.
I did. I couldn't find it. I feel like I had it on VHS, but I couldn't find it on VHS. So yeah, I had to pay to rent it on Apple TV. So, and one of my favorite sayings is he, when the other guy, Mitch, when he comes in and he asks something about, how was your night? And he's like, did you dream? And I wish I had written it down, something about, did you have the dream about little pickles being thrown at you? And I actually just ate at a restaurant this week called Little Pickle. And
Uh,
I'm wondering if that has something to do with the film or if it's just like a complete coincidence because I just thought of that. But that's one of my favorite lines in the film.
oh, I wondered. Yeah, I watched this one with Julian, and we were talking about you as we were watching it because he was like, "What do you think Haley was so drawn to in this?" And I said, "Well, besides Val Kilmer being super hot in it, I said probably I don't know, maybe the fact it was all these like smart people who are also weird, and her and I were both smart and weird, and so maybe I mean I think I would have loved it more if I saw it as a kid like you did because obviously seeing it for the first time at this age, I'm like, okay, well the movie is a little bit ridiculous. Obviously, the big ending with the popcorn is." There's a lot of stuff that's very over the top and
Mm-hmm.
dated and everything, but it's a cute movie. And I guess one of the things that surprised me, I thought Val Kilmer, I mean, he's the star of the movie, but the kid, the 15-year-old, the movie is actually kind of more centered on him and his experiences. He's the outsider. He's way younger than everyone else. Everyone else is like college. They are in college, and he gets sent to college. To
Mm-hmm.
work for this nefarious scientist professor who is making the kids basically work on this project for the
Military
military.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that they're not supposed to be doing undercover. So, and so when Val Kilmer's character, who he's like smart and a nerd, but also a rebel. So I think that's what the appeal is because he's not your
Hmm.
typical like Revenge of the Nerds type nerd. He's a good-looking nerd. Who also likes to party and have sex with girls and everything, which is not what you're used to seeing with a nerd character in the 80s movies, right? They're usually
Yes.
like very nerdy looking and have big glasses and whatever.
And
So
there's definitely a lot of nerds in this film too.
yeah, yeah, and we liked that there's a romance between the kid and this girl who is w way older than him, so that was weird to me. Although Juliet's
Yeah.
like, I think they look like the same age. I'm like, you need to get some new glasses because hey, she looks obviously way older than him. So,
Well, four
so
years, not way older, 4 years.
yeah, and of course there's a bad guy. There's multiple bad guys in this because there's the evil scientist and then one of the students who's kind of the nemesis. But yeah, the guy in the closet, what I liked about it is there's like several very inventive things. Like the guy that lives in their closet in their dorm
Yes.
room. That's really funny, a funny bit. And some of the other little bits that they do throughout the movie. Of course, the popcorn thing comes back, different things like that. So the
Hmm.
party that they have where they basically take over the whole gym and then the
The
different side.
Tanning Invitational.
Yes, and then there's also just the wacky things they're doing up and down their hallway because you have all these smart people, but they're inventing all these weird things to like they turn their hallway into an ice skating rink because they're, working with like freezing water and doing different things. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of fun with this. Again, Val
And I
Kilmer's
love the
doing,
dialogue. The
yeah.
dialogue is really smart and fun.
Yeah, and it's funny that again, Val Kilmer, I wonder, after this he had a little bit of a gap and then he did Top Gun and after that he just kind of kept with dramas and action and it's interesting. So, I mean, he did have Willow in this period, I think too. But for the most part, he really didn't do comedies anymore, which I just find interesting because a lot of people don't start their career doing comedy and then just completely go away from it. So, anyway, very, very interesting. A lot of fun.
Yes,
And
lots of fun.
I don't think I'd put it in my top. Is it still, would you still to this day, now that you're in your 40s, put it in like your top five of all time still?
No, it's probably my top 10.
Oh, still top 10
And
though.
I think also what I love about it is the music. It has such good music. Besides Tears for Fears, Don Henley, and it's like the classic songs that as soon as I hear these songs, I immediately transported back to the film. And that's what a good soundtrack should do.
Yeah. Yeah. So the music is a big part of it for you too, along with,
Yes.
but Val
Yes.
Kilmer was probably, would you say he was probably like your first crush when you were young and like your ideal man because of this movie?
Well, I mean, my first crush is Bud Cort
Oh, from Harold and
from
Maude.
Harold and
Yeah.
Maude.
Not
And so
exactly in the same looks
he's
area.
probably my second crush
That's funny.
that I can, well, besides like, guys in my classes.
Right. Um, yeah, and the director, Martha Coolidge, mainly is known for doing comedies. So she's definitely a comedy director. I think she did, oh gosh, what else did she do? Ramblin' Rose, which was actually not a comedy, but then she's gone on to, she does mostly TV now. She directed some episodes of Weeds, that show, Drop
That's
Dead
good.
Diva, stuff like that. So she's, like a lot of female directors, kind of been doing mostly TV now, but. Anyway, also very interesting. So, okay, we
Yes.
will move on to our last film, which is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from 2005. I think undisputedly the last really great film Val Kilmer did in his career. That's considered a four-star movie, and this movie he's actually not the star. So I picked this. I was really debating between this one and Heat because Heat. He is the lead, but I feel like what everyone remembers about Heat is Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And I thought it was also interesting to bring this back to the fact that towards the end of his career, he did do a comedy again and showed, although he's the straight man, not the straight man in
Not
this
really.
movie, but he's the straight man in terms of Robert Downey Jr. is actually the star and he's the goofy one. So Robert Downey Jr. plays a New York thief who gets mistaken for an actor and goes to LA to train under a private eye, played by Val Kilmer, who for a potential movie role. And then while they're kind of training, they end up getting involved in an actual crime, a mystery, and they are thrown together with a struggling actress played by Michelle Monaghan, who, like all my guy friends, had huge crush on during this
Who is
period.
also in White Lotus.
Yeah, in the new, yeah, the recent season.
Hmm.
So it's a tongue-in-cheek take on the like classic hard-boiled private dick movies, if you will. And so it's kind of a spoof of those, but not exactly a spoof in that, not like a Naked Gun type spoof in that. It actually is still have the mystery story and takes it seriously. There still is a mystery to solve, but then they step out of the movie every so often to like comment on the fact that, oh, this is kind of weird we're doing this, right? So Robert Downey Jr. is really the star of this movie, but Val Kilmer is such a great sidekick to him in this movie because he's a private eye. He's very tough. He's the tough one. Robert Downey Jr. is like hopeless. He's dropping things. His character's kind of dumb. Val Kilmer is the really smart, tough one, but his character is gay. And so they keep, there's all these like gay jokes in the movie. They call him Gay Perry. But so they have some fun with that. It's very early 2000s in that way, and that it's still kind of like funny to make homophobic jokes. Um, but it's not, I wouldn't say the movie is homophobic. I would just say that there's some elements of those jokes that you could kind of say are a little dated. And then, of course, Robert Downey Jr. has a huge crush on Michelle Monaghan, who turns out to be his childhood sweetheart, of
Hmm.
course, who he now reunites with in LA. And she's, her only successful acting job is this like really funny commercial she did for beer. So I have friends that are obsessed with this movie. Like they love it. Actually borrowed it from my friend Brian, who has a signed DVD signed by Michelle Monaghan of the movie. So they love it. They can quote it. It has lots of quotes in it that people cite all the time. Had you seen this one before?
I don't think I've seen it before. If I
Yeah.
had it, it wasn't
So what
recognizable.
did you think?
I did not like it.
Oh, really?
I thought it didn't hold up. I thought, yeah, so many of the jokes were dated and very cringy because a lot of the jokes were just like, you just can't do those jokes now. I fell asleep. I had to watch it a couple times because I kept falling asleep, which is never a good sign for me. That means I'm just not interested. I just thought it
Interesting.
was dumb. I mean, I was not into it at all. I loved Robert Downey Jr., but I just did not like the Val Kilmer character at all. Maybe because he's called Gay Perry, and I'm like, it was just like dumb. Like, is he gay? Is he straight? Like, I don't know.
Well,
And
he was
maybe this is one
obviously
of,
gay, but yeah, he said he was
but
gay.
he also said he was straight at one point. So I feel like this is a movie that if you didn't see it when it came out and you were into it then, I was not into it now.
Yeah, and I did see it when it came out, and I really like it. I think it's a really good comedy. But I think rewatching it recently, I would say that some of the jokes are a little dated. I mean, just as much as, I mean, the new Deadpool movies do the same thing. They're like, oh, we're making gay jokes. Isn't that funny? And it's like, no, it's not really that funny anymore, guys.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the, like this is Shane Black who wrote the Lethal Weapon movies, didn't direct them. And so it has, I think the dynamic between the three of them is really fun. Like, I think it's great that Michelle Monaghan's character, she gets to do some things, she gets to kick ass. And then the three of them, when they're teaming up on the mystery, I think there's some really fun elements, and they all have really great chemistry. So I enjoy it, but I could see why you wouldn't. And it is kind of considered Val Kilmer's last really great role. And he's put on a little weight and everything, but you can still see that he's a handsome guy.
Probably why I don't like it.
Oh, because he's not at his
He's
peak
not as
looks.
cute as yeah, he's not
Well, of
peak
course, but we none of us are as cute as we were in '85. Well, at least most of us, I would say. So, anyway, okay. Well, that wraps up our Val Kilmer tribute. Thank you for being on the show, Haley. Appreciate it.
you're
Have a
welcome.
great day and great movies. Bye bye.
Bye.